has joined the Labour Party. I wonder where you are on the government's plan on this. Philip's calling from Brighton. Hi, Philip.
Hi, Ben. It's honestly such a relief to hear all of these condemnations from your listeners. I don't know if it's a self-selecting audience, but that I feel a lot of relief. I work in international development, so often I have to sit across from governments, and I also feel that shame, especially when it comes to the refugee policy, because I always find it so curious that, you know, internationally we lobby governments not to forcibly return refugees, yet that's all we seem to talk about in this country. And, you know, I work particularly in Yemen and in Lebanon and around the borders of Syria. And, you know, it's spectacular. You know, the one thing I take issue with, and not that I think you're saying this, but the notion that there's only a certain amount of refugees we can take. Well, Lebanon's taken 1.5 million Syrians, but 90% of Syrians in Lebanon now live below the poverty line. 80% are food insecure. And then if you take Lebanese citizens, 82% live in what the United Nations Development Programme calls multidimensional poverty. So this is a neighbouring country, and this is the thing that I really wanted to say that annoys me, is when people think they're being progressive, or Tories are trying to, like, shift the discourse, they'll say things like, refugees should stay in their neighbouring country. But protracted crises around the world now are not contained in one country. Syria has an effect on Lebanon, has an effect on Jordan. If you're a Yemeni, where do you go? You're not going to Saudi. You know, there are certain contexts where the neighbouring country or exit from that country via a land route is impossible.
But isn't almost the bigger point, Philip, that actually most people are staying in those countries? I think I read today 87% of people who are displaced to a neighbouring country. So when people say, we can't cope, we haven't got the space, what we're talking about is the UK taking a tiny proportion of the remaining 13%. And then saying, well, you know, Pakistan and Bangladesh and as you say, Lebanon and Turkey and other countries, well, they can cope with asylum seekers in far greater numbers than us. But actually us being the 6th richest country in the world, oh, no, we can't cope.
You're correct. And the other thing that happens is that 13%, behind them are family members with whom they send remittances, right? So they actually improve the resilience of the country, of the people who are remaining in country. So by allowing in a certain percentage of refugees and giving them access to work, they actually generate stability down the chain of dependence. So, for instance, do you remember with Afghanistan, a lot of the discourse then was, look at all these men fleeing, right? Look at all these men fleeing. Well, the reason they're leaving and not their grandma is because they'll go and work and then send remittances back to their family that helps them remain in country. You have to ask yourself, if it was Britain, would you send your grandma first, or would you go first and hopefully try and find some means by which you can bring the rest of your family members? That's usually what we see in the chain of
it's ludicrous when people say, look at these men getting on these dinghies and isn't it awful, we need to put a stop to it, and then also saying, why didn't they bring their grandmas and mothers?
You know, it's ridiculous. And, you know, the other thing that's upset me as someone who works in the field is, you know, I think it's pretty good that it's called the Illegal Migration Bill, because it will be found illegal. There's no question. You know, depending on what level of law they have to go up to, if it goes all the way to the United Nations, it violates the 51 Convention. Absolutely no question it violates the 51 Convention.
They're saying their confidence is legal, but then also had to admit in a letter to MPs today that there was a above 50% chance that it would be found that it wasn't.
It's absolutely not legal. And also on top of that, are you seriously going to tell me that a country that is a permanent member of the Security Council, is going to violate one of the foundational documents of international humanitarian law? I mean, if we're actually going to do that, I mean, we're a joke. Like that's.
Well, Philip, it's worth touching on that because.